In this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about new versus old, whether or not to buy a new boat and order one from the manufacturer or buy an older boat. If you're watching this video, you probably have some interest in becoming a cruiser and buying a sailboat and sailing away to some remote deserted island or something somewhere like we did. We didn't set out to buy a new boat. Let's get that straight right away. And in fact, I had previously owned a Catalina 42 out in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I had spent probably about 18 months or so retrofitting her, trying to get her up to the creature comforts and fix a variety of things that we needed to have fixed in order to do this. And after about $30,000, I came to the conclusion that it just was not going to be the boat for us. There were so many things that were just lacking that I was not going to be able to add because of her size and her storage, whether it be, fuel and tankage, volumes and lack of air conditioning and all that sort of thing. I know a lot of cruisers, have various levels of comfort requirements and various levels of things that they want. We didn't set out to rough it. We could definitely get by with far less than we have on this boat. I see cruisers out here with sailboats as small as sub 30 feet, and obviously they go as large as 100, 150 feet, mega yachts. And so you get the spectrum, and you kind of have to figure out exactly what it's going to take for you to be happy and comfortable, and also most importantly your spouse, and they may be different standards. So once we decided that we needed to get another boat, I immediately put Farage, which was our Catalina 42, up for sale, and I started the work and research of deciding exactly what boat we wanted to purchase. And initially we set out to buy a used boat, and we actually didn't know at the get-go whether or not we were going to buy a sloop or a catamaran. And in a future episode I'll probably talk through our thought process on all that. So after going out to Fort Lauderdale and having taken a look at the Hylas 48, being given an opportunity to sail on a Nautitech 46 open, and looking at some lagoons and some leopards, some Antilles, and a few other boats, we ultimately decided that we wanted a catamaran, and then we decided to withdraw our offer to purchase the Hylas 49 and to buy a catamaran. So having had a 1976 Ranger 33, my first boat, and a 1992 Catalina 42, I know the work of maintaining a boat, especially at that age, and the types of things that can go wrong with it. I've done all sorts of work on boats, on those boats. So starting with the Ranger 33, I had a case of the blisters and osmotic blisters on the hull, and I stripped the hull down and put a barrier coat on it, and it was gruesome work, and I did it myself, and I will never do that again. Long story short, I probably, after hauling the boat at its inspection, after seeing the blisters, I should have backed out of the deal, but I didn't. And I'll talk a little bit about buying a boat in future episodes, because it is kind of an emotional process. And in my Catalina 42, I've done everything from electrical work to plumbing work to mechanical work, all sorts of things. I knew the types of work that kind of, when a boat gets 10 years older, things start to go downhill, especially if it's not as cared for as it should. And, for a lot of boats that are sitting in marinas, you walk down the marinas, they do not move. They do not move for weeks at a time, and, they're obviously, not as cared for as, a boat that is being lived upon. I didn't want a 10-year-old boat and have to deal with replacing mechanical equipment, replacing winches. I had gone through the process of installing electrical winches on my Catalina 42, and it is not fun. I didn't want to do all that, and to find a boat that actually has everything that you really want to have, that is used, is pretty difficult. So ultimately, I also started looking at new boats, and there was obviously some newer boats that are priced much higher than Nautitech 46 Open, and some that are priced lower. Buying a new boat does not necessarily mean you do not have to do any work, and in fact, I started to put together a list of all the things that I've needed to fix on Wild One since we purchased it, and I will walk through them later in this episode. If you can do the work, I think you should do the work. There's a lot of benefits to actually doing the work yourself. First of all, you get to know the boat inside and out, and you get to know all the systems, and I think that is really, really super important, especially if you're going to be sailing long distances, when you have to be self-sufficient. Things break, and you don't want to be, the more you know about your boat, and the less you have to kind of root cause and figure out on the spot, when you're without power or without engines, or you're taking on water, or whatever the case may be, the better off and the safer it's going to be. Of course, there is also another benefit of doing the work yourself, is that it's less expensive. Not everything we can do. I don't know how to weld. I'm not going to build a solar arch. There's some things that are left better to professionals that have done specific types of work, and actually know better than you. I have had to replace this cheek block here multiple times. I think it's just definitely undersized for what it is. I have also replaced the running rigging for this davit system. I have replaced this block. Part of replacing this line required me to actually do an eye splice, so learning how to do eye splices. This pad eye I've had to take out and rebed because it was actually leaking. But this is our first reef, and I had replaced it, and then subsequent to replacing it, I also developed some chafe. And so I've added this Dyneema sleeve on it to eliminate the chafe. I've had to also replace this thermostat. This in and of itself wasn't that big of a deal, but unfortunately the whole pattern for the display was not the same, and so I actually had to have and glue in some additional wood in the back of the insert here, so that I had some material in which to screw in the screws. Alright, these Dometic kind of shades, both combo windscreen or bug screen and shades, are kind of cruddy in my humble opinion, and I had to replace this one because the shade came out of the roller, and so I got a new one to replace it, but this one is still not working very well. So what was previously here was a clamshell raw water strainer right here, and for whatever reason, I don't know, maybe it's back pressure for when the freshwater pump turns off, but the O-ring around the clamshell would blow out, and then you would end up losing a tank or two of water into the bilge. And I tried everything possible, different O-rings of different diameters and all sorts of things to try to get it fixed, and I couldn't get it fixed. So I ended up buying a new raw water strainer, and so I had to put all this in. So I'm changing the engine oil and the transmission oil on my outboard. I had to use a wrench, a pair of channel locks to get this off. I don't know why they put it on so tight. The gear oil is pretty clear, and there's no water in it, which is good. So I've been working for the past 4 or 5 hours trying to figure out why the generator is leaking diesel. Right, well, I found it, and there's a hairline crack in the elbow. I applied some epoxy and let it cure about an hour. Put it around the fitting where it was cracked, and put new Loctite and started the engine, and it seems like it's not leaking, amazingly. We get the new wind instrument up. I tightened that antenna up. I don't know what that line's all about, and the Windex is now tightened up. All right, here I am at the top of the mast. We're very much close, and this is where the sheave comes out, and this stupid black line jumps it, and now it's all caught up in there. On both port and starboard, I run these fair leads at the base of the stanchions here. This is for the guy for the parasailer. These pad eyes I had added, as well as the running rigging and the block and the springs. So this is solid fiberglass up here. So we have one on both port and starboard. Finally getting around to installing the clutches for our parasailer. I need 2 clutches, and it'll actually be useful for the Jennifer as well, because we can actually free this winch up over here. So we have a dual clutch, and these 2 black lines represent, one's the down line, and or the guy, I think, and the other is the sheet, and I need this on both sides. This one is showing the backing plate. Okay, I added this dual USB jack right here so that I could keep my Iridium transceiver plugged in at all time. Right now it's turned off, and turns out it's not a great place to mount this, but unfortunately I couldn't find another place to mount it. The issue is that the antenna cable is just not long enough to reach it up to the helm, based on where we mounted it, and also unfortunately they didn't design the antenna for the GPS receiver to be able to be run externally, and so it has an internal GPS antenna, and as such it just doesn't get good enough reception down here. Alright, another episode you've probably seen me mounting the Starlink antenna and routing the cable and mounting the router and that sort of thing. So I've had to do that. I've also added this WM4 Simrad Sirius XM weather radio, and also this is our external Starlink antenna, and all that work I had done myself. Our arch, solar arch, was done by Just Catamarans in Fort Lauderdale. I have 4 410 watt panels mounted to the arch. The solar arch is very good build quality in my opinion. I think it looks decent, and this was actually done by a third party in Fort Lauderdale. I forget the individual's name that actually builds these, but you'll see a lot of yachts, a lot of boats that have a similar type of design by Just Catamaran. Probably do an episode or so on the installation from start to finish on this Daewoo Mini washing machine. We leave these in here because it's side load and stuff, and you want it to dry inside and not get a bunch of mold and algae and stuff growing inside. But it works great. It's also a dryer, but we've never used a drying function, and I doubt really it will work very well, given it doesn't really have an external vent. So we don't really use it. But and as such, I probably installed a inverter for it that's way overpowered for what's being used. I have a 3 kilowatt 220 volt 50 hertz inverter to power this thing, and I think rarely it probably gets over a couple hundred watts in usage. Alright, I focused a lot on one of the benefits of a sailboat, a new sailboat, being that you should have less serious upgrades or refits to actually do on it, and I think that is probably true. I don't think necessarily that just because you buy a new sailboat, though, that you know, you pick it up, you get it delivered, and then you're off, you know, setting off across the sea, you know, searching for, you know, remote anchorages or anything. I think there is still a significant amount of equipping and provisioning and things that you would want to add to the boat to get you going. And in some cases, a lot of that comes with the used sailboat. You know, in fact, a lot of the fasteners and spare parts and that sort of thing that I have on Wild One came from my older sailboats. I took a lot of that stuff with me when I sold the boat. New boats will probably, you know, just like a car, will depreciate right off the dock. I've estimated that we probably depreciate 10 to 20% right as you drive them off from the dock. But all boats, I think, eventually kind of asymptote out. Their depreciation curve is much steeper earlier on, and then eventually it starts to asymptote out the older and older the boat is. So it is possible that, you know, you can get a used boat that is in the flatter part of the depreciation curve, and you know, and in fact, I think my first two boats were well within that part of the curve, so they don't depreciate as dramatically as a new boat would. All that said, despite the fact of all these things that I've had to replace, none of which, knock on wood, have been significant. That's not to say that they haven't been costly and haven't taken a significant amount of time, but they haven't been a significant amount of money, as would perhaps buying a older boat where you might need to replace the sails, you might need to replace the running rigging and standing rigging. You know, maybe the engine needs overhaul, that sort of thing. You want to install a new water maker. Those are the things that we kind of weighed in our mind on whether or not we should buy a new boat or not. And at the end of the day, getting us out on the water sooner rather than later was one of the greatest influencers in our decision.